Hi everybody, this is Katie Deering from Region 11, and I'm going to be walking you through this root cause analysis piece that we're doing with our essential question. So the question that you're working through and you're trying to come up with a solution for is that idea of why distance learning is so challenging. Why is it difficult? This is something that a lot of us have been doing for a few weeks now. I think that a lot of students would say that this is difficult. I think a lot of teachers would say that this is difficult, but sometimes it's really hard to pinpoint what the actual difficult part of that is. So we're working to solve that problem together. Something that we can do to really pinpoint and narrow down the actual problem is something called root cause analysis. I don't know if you guys have ever done this, even in just relationships, where you think you're mad at somebody for something, and then the more that you think about it and the more you talk about it, it's actually this complete other thing that's the issue, right? So that's kind of what we're thinking about with this root cause analysis. And I'm going to model this for you with a different question. So this is the graphic organizer that is with your materials. And so just so that we're not being redundant, I've chosen a different question, and I'm going to walk through this process modeling that question. So the question that I'm going to tackle is something else that's kind of frustrating as a student, right? I know for me, one of the things that I had the hardest time with, even now as an adult, whenever I have to do homework for a college program or something, is that idea of group work. So why is group work challenging? So I am going to model this root cause analysis for you and the different steps that are outlined in the materials, but I'm going to use a different question. So just make sure that you understand that right now I'm going to be modeling this question, not this one. So the first thing that I had to do, and we did this a little bit in phase one, is to just brainstorm. What are some things that I immediately think of about why group work is challenging? Well, one of the things that I know is challenging for group work is sometimes the expectations of what the group has to do, and even just what individuals have to do inside the group. Sometimes the expectations are not clear. I'm going to add that word "not" real quick. So it's kind of vague, it's really subjective, and so people don't really know what to do, and a lot of people aren't just go-getters. They're going to wait to be told. So then the workload gets a little uneven, which I'm going to put as my second thing, is that a lot of times in group work, people don't do the same amount of work. And that, I'm a type A personality. I am always the one, or I was always the one that would be like, I'll just do it. And so that was always really frustrating, as I would end up doing most of the work in group projects. So sometimes that is a frustration. Another thing that can be a challenge is just group dynamics, right? So like not everybody gets along. So if you're in a group with somebody that you didn't get to pick, that you don't like, that just kind of is like your antithesis, your foil, right? Somebody that is just not for you, that can be really difficult. And I think sometimes too, group size can affect it. So I can much more easily work in a group of 3 than like a group of 6. So sometimes that makes it challenging. So once I've brainstormed a few ideas, what I want to do is I want to pick one idea that I think either I'm excited about, I could talk about for quite a while, and something that I feel like I have a lot to say about and might be worth exploring. So out of these 4, this is the one that really bothers me. I'm very much like a fairness person. So that idea of people not all having the same amount of work, or the workload being not equal, was always really frustrating. So I feel like I have a lot to say about that. So now that we have one idea that answers that question, we're going to take that idea and we're going to turn this idea into a why question. So I might have to reword it a little bit, but I'm going to just go ahead and make a shot, and I'm going to write my why question here. So why don't people do the same amount of work in a group? So now we have a new question that we're looking at that's a little bit more specific. And I know my handwriting's a little sloppy, so I apologize. Why don't people do the same amount of work in a group? So we're going to repeat the process we just did. So we're going to think of as many answers as we can to the why question. Now, if you would rather do this on like a scratch sheet of paper and just kind of sketch note it out, like make your own graphic organizer, if you're like, I have 7 ideas and there's only 4 boxes, that's totally fine. The graphic organizer is not meant to stifle your brain, right? It's just kind of for people who need the visual boxes. Sometimes that can be helpful to see it all on one page. So if you have a different idea or a way that this would organize, as long as you're going through the process, that's fine. So I'm going to brainstorm, and I might not fill up all the boxes, but I'm going to think, why don't people in a group situation do the same amount of work? Well, a lot of times people have varied interest levels. So if we're doing a group project on a novel, I would probably be super into it, but there's a lot of people that wouldn't. Whereas if people were doing a group project in science, that might not be something that I'm super excited about, but other people would. So there's a variety of interest levels in whatever your topic is. Another reason why people might not do the same amount of work is that people have differing work ethics. So the way that I think about work and homework and grades might not be the way that other people value that, or maybe other people are busy, like we have busy schedules, so that could have something to do with it. There's also the concept about people having different ability levels, right? Or even different levels of confidence in their abilities. So with the example I gave about an English project or a novel project, I was an English major in college. So I love anything around books. So I feel like I bring a lot to the table in a group situation. Well, if you have a person in a group member, or if you're the person in the group member that's like, reading is just not what I enjoy, it's really tough for me, and now all these other people in my group are going to know that I struggle. So sometimes that it's easier to just not do the work because you don't want to do it wrong. And you don't want other people to be impacted. So I feel like I have a lot to say about that one. Then another thing that's in my brain, and maybe it's just because I'm a teacher now, but I think sometimes the way that the grades are determined, or even like the rubric, isn't clear or specific. So I'm going to put that in here about the way that people are graded, or the rubric that's given. It isn't specific for the group, so it doesn't really hold people accountable, and there's not really anything laid out to really give clarity. So I'm going to put that phrase, or clear, on what each group member is supposed to contribute to. So now that I actually said that idea, I think I might opt for that one more. So now I'm going to select one of these. And I like the grade and rubric piece just because that's where my teacher brain is right now. So now we're going to create one more why question. So we're going to take that idea and we're going to ask that question. So I'm going to reword it a little bit, obviously starting with the word why. So why do grades or rubrics for group work, why is it that sometimes those lack clarity or specificity? And when I say specificity, I'm just really talking about really being specific for holding all group members accountable. Okay, so why is that? Why is it that sometimes those outlines aren't created in a way to hold people accountable? Okay, so then one more time, I'm going to brainstorm, and I know for sure I don't have 4 things, but I'm just going to give it the old college try. I'm going to try as hard as I can. So one problem that I think keeps those grades or those rubrics, those instructions, they keep the clarity and all of that a little muddy, is that honestly, if you have different people who are doing different things within the group, they're not doing the exact same thing, but they're still doing work, it's hard to measure equal effort in a way that's fair. So that's kind of a long answer. So I'm just going to say that it's hard to measure equal effort when people contribute differently. So for example, I remember when I was teaching, a teacher down the hall was doing this really cool catapult project in physics. And so these groups were creating catapults. Well, I'm sure that there were some people who were a lot a lot more helpful in the planning process, like drawing the blueprints, doing the calculations. I'm sure that other people were really handy in actually putting the materials together. I'm sure there were some more creative people that could test with different things. And so how do you measure people's grades when everybody's doing something different, but people are all contributing to it? So I think it's really hard to make something that's that specific. Another thing that I think about a lot of times is just the idea of grades in general, that grades aren't always the best measurement of learning. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that as a teacher, right? Because we sure love our grades. But are there other ways besides putting a number on it that could measure how much people worked or how much people learned? I don't know, something else. And then I will tell you this, as a teacher, a lot of times teachers just don't have time to think about and create such detailed rubrics and analyze all of the different things. I left a word out. To make the rubric that they need. So I see 3 different problems that would contribute to that question. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at those responses because I really can't think of a 4th. And I'm going to pick one that I feel like is a problem that maybe I could actually find some kind of a solution to, okay? So when I'm looking at all of these, I think the thing that I would have the most control over is maybe this first one. That is really hard to measure equal effort when people contribute differently. So I think this would be a really fun thing to try to solve, to brainstorm solutions to really think about the way that it impacts other people. And I would enjoy trying to solve that problem because I think it would really help. And it would always, if I could find some kind of a solution to this problem, that in turn would help to solve this big question here. So my focus now for the rest of our phases and our materials is going to be to try to solve this problem that I've circled. So I hope that this helped to provide some clarity to our root cause analysis. Feel free to go back and pause different parts or to watch this video again, or you have my email address with the materials. I'm happy to offer any clarity that I can. Thanks and stay safe.